Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the Clallam County EDC's Coffee Chat, Coffee with Colleen. We are excited to have Natalie Miller on with us this morning from Apprenti. She will be sharing with us all about the program. And just a few things, if you have any questions for her, please either put them in the chat and I'll ask the questions on your behalf, or alternatively, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. So with that, if you'll try to keep yourself muted so we don't hear any background noise, it would be greatly appreciated. And I am going to let Natalie go ahead and take it away. And thanks again, Natalie.
Thank you for having me. So I want to make sure that everyone can see my presentation. I'm sharing the right screen that says overview of Apprenti.
Yep, it looks great.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you again for inviting me to be a part of the conversation today. When Colleen and I met, I was telling her about what we do at Apprenti. And as we were closing, she said, I do these coffee chats on Wednesday. Would you like to come? Absolutely. I'm really excited to be able to talk about the history of Apprenti. Many of you, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you know what apprenticeship is. I always like to start and anchor it there. So raise your hand, or you can put it in the chat. Okay, good. This makes this conversation a heck of a lot easier. But I also want to anchor it if some of you may not know, because when you think of apprenticeship, you may think of the traditional apprenticeship. You may think of the trades. And what we do at Apprenti is we've adapted that model, that time-tested model, and created opportunities for individuals within IT occupations. We're starting a new HR occupation, and then also getting into the life sciences space, which I'm going to talk about today. So when you leave today, I hope that I'm able to provide you with an overview of who we are, how we operate, how funding works. That's one of the things that as a US DOL intermediary that we support employers with. So working with different EDCs, working with workforce boards, working with the federal government, working with private funders to identify ways to subsidize the cost of the training and provide that wraparound support to the apprentices, and then also providing support to the organizations in the form of sometimes there's tax credits, there's support to the organization that's available. And for many, if you've known about apprenticeship, you know that retention is typically higher than with new college graduates. There tends to be higher engagement rates. And so when employers start this program after they've seen a pilot, they often see that this is something that long-term may not just be for one particular occupation, but might be something to look at holistically for the organization, whether it's upskilling of new employee or current employees, reskilling, whatever your preferred term is, or bringing in net new. So Colleen beat me to it and said, there's some housekeeping. So I have a slide deck. You're going to get this at the end, Mitch. I'm going to send you a different version than what I sent you this morning, but you will get a copy of this. That way you don't have to take copious, or you can still take notes, but I'm going to send you a copy of what I present today so that you have this for your record. And you also have my contact information if you have any questions. We do have time at the end for Q&A, but I also want to be able to pause. I'm going to pause every few slides just to see if there's some questions. There typically are. If you're thinking it, please feel free to put it in the chat, or you can just raise your hand. There's a good sized group today, so we'll be able to manage that, I think, very well. So with that, Apprenti was started 10 years ago. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary on April 30th. We were created as part of the Washington Technology Industry Association. I'm down in Portland. I'm not far from you. And so I'm the West Coast director. I knew about the WTIA before I started here 3 years ago, because we have a similar organization here in Oregon called the Technology Association of Oregon. And this organization, it was really born out of tech organizations looking at their talent and saying, we're seeing a shortage on the horizon, and we're also seeing a need that we want to be able to identify on-ramps into our careers through untapped talent that we haven't thought about yet, that we haven't really identified what's the pathway in, and how do we create those pathways outside of traditional hiring, which would be new college graduates, and then also recruiting from other companies. And so that's where we started from. And so our mission is really just very simply to create that bridge for employers and for individuals to find opportunities in tech careers, not just the tech industry, but also now HR and life sciences. And then we're starting to step into kind of some very high level advanced manufacturing as well. So we are a US DOL intermediary, and why that matters to you and what that means, if you don't know what that means, is we have a contract with the Department of Labor to be evangelists, and that's part of our mission, even though that's our mission, even without the DOL, is to be an evangelist of registered apprenticeship. And so with our contract with the Department of Labor, that also provides another layer of funding options for employers that wish to start these tech occupations. And you may want to have, and I'm going to talk through kind of different ways that we support employers. We can support employers by helping you create your own apprenticeship program that you manage. You manage the standards. You work with the state of, Washington L&I or the US DOL. If you're looking a little more outside of the Pacific Northwest and have more locations than just one. But we really are here to provide expertise when it comes to registered apprenticeship. And so when I was speaking with Colleen, one of the things I mentioned is, as you are talking about registered apprenticeship in your organization to build talent, even if it might not fit in the occupations that we currently have, chances are we know someone, and we have a team that is here to support you as you evaluate and build those apprenticeship programs. Colleen, we had talked about the fact that there is need for manufacturing talent in your area, in your geography, and what does that look like? And so one of my colleagues is working with Colleen to kind of see if there's a way that we know someone who might be able to help build something there. Our impact is big. We have served over 5,000 apprentices in that 10 years. We have a goal of getting to 5 and then 10,000 apprentices a year in our growth. So we really want to be a support to many types of organizations. But we've worked with 350 employers over that time, many of which we've helped by supporting and sponsoring those programs, but also in providing technical support. And then you can read the other statistics here. One that we're really, really proud of is that 89% of our apprentices have been retained by their employer at the end of that apprenticeship. Because this isn't a try and buy, this isn't a temporary staffing model. This is about creating talent for the organization. And so when a company begins an apprenticeship program, at the end, it is all about retaining that person. So any questions about who Apprenti is?
Well, I've got a question about the last bullet, 55 million
Yes.
in RTI funding. What does RTI stand for?
Good. Yes. It's required technical instruction. So in apprenticeship, there's kind of two aspects to the training, which is the on-the-job training and working with the mentors and working with managers. And then there's the related technical instruction. This tends to be, for some employers, a hurdle. Because it is a cost that can be anywhere from 5 to, in some cases, we've had RTI that's $25,000 per apprentice for really high level, complicated cybersecurity analyst roles, for example. And so in that's where the support that we can bring in, that's where we're providing that support to cover the cost of that funding so that the employer doesn't have to pay that. And one of the things that we even have done, which these slides we've just kind of are refreshing our brand. And one of the things that we've just done in this last year and launched is we brought in-house training to reduce the cost. So we actually have our own training academy. We've hired instructors to deliver this training. We still have partners that we work with that are training providers, but what we have found is that we're able to deliver that cost, the training at a lower cost. So sorry, RTI, if I get into apprentice speak or apprenticeship speak, please raise your hand and be like, no, you just did. So please do that, because I may do that.
So when you talk about the training, you're talking about the RTI, the classroom work, and that
Mhm.
can be done virtually, or is that a on-site in-person training?
It really it depends on the occupation. So in our life sciences space, there is in person, it's, in a classroom and then also virtual. With our HR apprenticeship, it is all self-directed. And then with our IT or technology occupations, it is all virtual. So we actually will deliver that virtually in everyone. And the only exception in there would be like our data center technicians or IT support professional. There's a piece of that training that is done in person. But that's typically also done within the construct of OJ of on the job training as well. That makes sense. So great questions.
So you say that it's paid. So for the apprentice, they are getting paid. Is there a wage that is standard, or is it minimum wage, or how is that evaluated?
Yeah. So as part of the registered apprenticeship program, so again, the kind of what you see here is that it is paid. So all apprenticeships are paid. They are a learn to earn model. So regardless of occupation, it's a learn to earn model. They are also protected class. And so they are not, it is not required that you pay them what you would pay. So I'm going to use a cybersecurity analyst. And so if you had a cybersecurity analyst that you were paying them $100,000 a year, the apprentice would make 60 to 70% of that during on the job training and the related technical instruction. Some companies will pay more than that. There are minimums that are set in the standards that we file with in Washington. It's Washington L&I or with the US Department of Labor. Those minimums are based on the average either within the state or nationally, respectively. And those minimums, in most cases, organizations will meet. And in the 3 years that I've been here, I've only had one. It was an IT support professional, and that employer said, "We've been meaning to increase this wage anyway. Now you've given us the opportunity to do that." But in many cases, while we are not dictating what is being paid, the standards will say that there is a minimum. But again, most employers can meet that minimum. And throughout the apprenticeship,
Isn't it?
which I'll talk to in just a minute, is that there's actually wage increases throughout the apprenticeship as well.
Okay. And I think if I remember correctly, which this is a question, isn't it that in the trades and construction, apprentices make 85% of what the journeyman's wage is?
I don't work in the construction trade, so that I do not know.
Okay.
Someone else may know that. That is not, I do not pretend to be an expert in that. When I said what areas of expertise are, that's very different. And so there might be someone who knows that and could speak to that, but unfortunately, I do not know that percentage.
Okay, thanks. I see Stephen has his hand raised.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm
Stephen.
ahead here. I'm sure you're going to have a slide that explains all this, but since people are asking questions, I'll throw one in.
Yeah.
The profile of the 350 employers, is this, the Microsofts and Amazons in the world? Is it the small to medium entities? Can you give us just a kind of a profile of those 300 employers and who utilizes you most?
See all of the above. And I would actually say there's another addition, which is some small organizations as well. So they are not, well, if you look at our website, you'll see Amazon and Microsoft. Those were some of the very first employers. Most of the companies that I'm working with right now are not those big tech giants. They're in healthcare. I have a genetics company. I'm talking to a company that does retail tire sales. We've done we're talking to organizations that are in the retail space as well, hospitality, because those organizations are looking at how do I bring talent into my organization, and I have needs within within the space that I'm looking at, and this is an accelerated way to do that. And the other piece of this, which I'll talk to as I go through my presentation, is also the impact on the community. Because what we're doing is we're not bringing people from one location into that community. How we approach this is we're working within those local communities to identify individuals who are appropriate and who are interested in those types of careers. if that makes sense. So it's not importing talent for an opportunity. So we just, the most current opportunity I have right here in Portland, you know, we wanted to look at this. They had 2 locations. One was in Medford, which is, you know, 5 hours from Portland, and one was in Portland. And we did not look outside of those communities to make sure that we were finding people who were in that space. So we would do the same thing with your employers up there. Yeah, great question. But yeah, the profile, Stephen, really is less about size of company and it's about philosophy of organization. I think if I were to say, and I say this all the time, it's not the size of the company. So it doesn't mean that a big company or a medium company. What really it's about is, are they willing to put in the time to develop the apprentice? Are they willing to identify people who might not come into the job fully trained and have the years of experience? And in many organizations, when I'm talking with them, I'm not looking at size or industry that really matters. It really is, if you can commit to that piece of it, if you believe in the philosophy of apprenticeship, then we can have a conversation. I talked to one company, it was a husband and wife and one other person, they were an IT company and they want to bring on an apprentice. So I think that's maybe an extreme example, but I hope my point is illustrated. I hope that answered your question.
No, I really appreciate it. Maybe I'm a little biased. I have twins that have just graduated from college, and one starting an internship at Nova Nordis, the Ozempic.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'm trying to figure out internships versus apprentices and kind of
Yeah.
kicking off their careers. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. So in internship, I can actually speak to that. So internship and apprenticeship are the structure of it is very different, right? So an internship, an organization will bring on interns. Yes, they may hire some of them, but the intention with an apprenticeship is that the candidate is selected as the apprenticeship begins, and it is with the goal in mind that they will land in a job and they will be hired. It is the expectation that they will be hired into that role. With an internship, they are short term, they are project based. They might be related to their, you know, occupation. And again, I have a college degree. I loved my internships and they were great. They're very different. And what I say is they're also stackable. And so in many organizations, if they have new college grad programs and then also an internship program, I ask that we be connected with them because we want to make sure that we're connecting the apprentices and the interns together to be able to talk through how they're navigating the organization as well. So an intern is, you know, they have a general degree in, I'll just say computer science. They work for a company for maybe 3 to 5 months. Again, I'm not saying they're bad or good. They're just different. And then at the end of that, they may be hired. They may not. You know, your daughter, I'm not going to pick on her, but she may use that opportunity to go work at a company that she's identified that's better, that for her. Whereas with an apprenticeship at the very beginning, they're being interviewed, that they are interviewing the organization, they see if they want to work there, and then, you know, they go through the training and then they go through the on-the-job training and then they're hired. So, or I should say converted into that, you know, journey level worker.
Thank
I
you.
hope that helps. Yeah, I get that question a lot. And I even have one organization that uses it interchangeably when they're talking about apprenticeship, and they've worked with us for about 1.5 years. So I always have to kind of remind them we're the apprenticeship, there's internship, but they're very good programs to have kind of linked together if you have them.
So also, I know there is a legal definition for apprenticeship that and when I talk to people from the Department of Labor and Industries, they talk about, oh, we have a list of apprenticeships that have been approved by the Apprenticeship and Training Council.
Mhm.
And so does Apprenti fit within that?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're not apprenticeship A, we are registered apprenticeship. And those
Yeah.
are two very different things. And we're not pre-apprenticeship, which is just training, and not just training. There are good programs that are pre-apprenticeship programs that could lead. And we're also, I think in some instances, you may have apprenticeship programs that are what we in the biz call a train and deploy model, where people come in, they get trained, and then they're waiting to be placed. That's not the model that we operate under. We operate under an employer activated, employer driven registered apprenticeship. So we will not train someone and then have them sit on a bench. So the employer will come to us. And so that's my job, is employer engagement and education. And then I have a team that when we're getting into implementation and we're working through the program, then that's when we spring into action. And either the employer will say to us, we want you to retrain our employees, or we're going to be bringing in net new talent. And so then that's when we have our sourcing team that will go out. We have a pool that we work with, that we have already in place.
You mentioned apprenticeship A. What is that?
Yes, registered apprenticeship. So registered
Okay.
apprenticeship, being registered with the state of Washington, LNI, or the U.S. Department of Labor.
Okay,
Yeah.
which you also call apprenticeship A.
Oh, I mean big, I'm sorry, little a and big A, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, okay. Great questions. I'm going to continue and talk through just a couple of things about our process, because I think that will answer some other questions that people will have. So I started to allude to this a little bit, but the process that we work is that when an employer is coming to us and says, we want you to be the sponsor of the program, which means that we're working with the Department of Labor on the employer's behalf. And then we also will be sourcing for the employer. So that might mean where we have a pool of individuals that are already in our pool, or if we're activating our sourcing model. We have 2 open application periods every year. It's June 1st to 15th and December 1st to 15th. So people that you know, we close on Sunday. If you know anyone who might want to become an apprentice or just register with us in general. And in the case where we might not have a pool, then that's when we go into kind of an active model. So what we do is we actually have an assessment. When people come to us, they do not have to have any technical experience nor a degree. They just have to be 18 years of age and eligible to work in the United States. Our employer partners, we rely on your screening process. If you do background checks, things like that, we're just bringing the talent to the table. So if there were 2 people that you wanted, or 2 apprentices you wanted to bring on board, then we are going to plan to present 4 candidates for you to interview. Our assessment has 2 components. One is an actual assessment, an online assessment that looks at logic, critical thinking, and math. Those are some key characteristics that we know to be very important for apprentices as they enter and continue into the program. And then we also do a behavior interview. But before we do that, our team is actually working with our organizations to learn about their culture, learn about what it's like to work there, what are the benefits, what are things that make that organization unique, so that we can share that with the candidates. The interviews happen with the employers. And then I always say this is where we do the happy dance, because this is where the offer is made for the apprenticeship program, but then also by the employer for the candidate to become an apprentice. The training happens. I'll show you a slide here in a little bit of our IT occupations and what the timeline looks like. And then they go over to the employer, and now they are going after the training. Now they're on the job training. There are milestones that are really critical in our apprenticeship, in the apprenticeship. So some of this is a little duplicative from what I just shared, but some of it is new. So as the candidate is now going from interview stage and then into become an apprentice, and they're in related technical instruction, we are working with the employer to say, okay, who's the manager day-to-day going to be? Are there mentors that you want to have in place, whether in the department or outside of the department? And then we help create what a work plan looks like. It's very simple. It can be a Word document. It can be an Excel document. We have samples of this that we can give. And what this does is this aligns to the skills and competencies that the apprentice needs to develop, and before they can receive their certificate of completion. And then we are also, as the apprentice is meeting with their manager, with their mentors, they're learning new skills, we're connecting with the employer and conducting actual surveys with the employers, the managers, on the 2, 5, and 10-month mark of the apprenticeship. And that's because usually after about 60 days, we want to be able to identify, how is the apprentice doing? 5 months, how are we doing it about halfway? Because there's a little wage progression that happens at about halfway during on-the-job training. Give a little carrot. How are you doing? Have you met 50% of your competencies? Are you well on your way? And then at the 10-month, it's really about making that transition from apprentice to journey level worker. And then we again do the second happy dance, which is when the apprentice is now converted and is a journey level worker. When I mentioned earlier that we can do, so do not be overwhelmed by everything you see here. I share this simply to illustrate that there are lots of components to registered apprenticeship. And in registered apprenticeship, as we're having conversations with employers, I want to be able to identify, what do you want to take on and own? What do you want us to take on and own? Most of the time, employers say, take as much off of our plate as possible. We need your help in finding and creating talent. So I share this with you just so that you can see that there's these very deliberate stages of the apprenticeship model, and that each of us can have a separate ownership. And as we typically, as our team is working with organizations, they may migrate to where they want us to manage most of the program, and then they want to take on a little bit more ownership of the day-to-day, and eventually maybe wholly owned by the employer, which again, that is our job and that is what we are here to do. So any questions about our process and how we work to support employers?
Will you be showing us a list of the different types of occupations that you have apprenticeships for?
Right here.
Awesome.
So these are, I'm going to actually go back one slide. So we actually have kind of 3 pillars, and a 4th is being developed. So information technology, human resources, and life sciences. Whoops, let's go back one. And so here are all of our IT occupations. You can also see that there are some of these that are a little different, but it's organizations that we've worked with where we've created occupations. Like field services representative is actually with an electric company. It's a very technical job. They were having a really hard time finding people. And so they came to us and said, can you help us create this apprenticeship? And we did. And then we also have, we have a sourcing recruiter, and that was for a tech company. They wanted us to, a technology-based organization. Well, they're not a tech company, but they are very tech driven. And so what you're seeing here is all of the occupations, but then also what that training looks like. And in many cases, it is all front loaded, meaning that it's at the very beginning of the apprenticeship. So after the training, then they come over and work for the employer. Michael.
Looks like Dr. Maxwell has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at that training, some of this seems like it's quite obviously very, very technical. Who's actually providing the training? Who's developing the curriculum and materials? Because is it Apprenti itself, or are you contracting with different subject matter experts to put together a curriculum, or how's that work?
So it's both. So we have historically, before we created our training academy last year, worked with different outside organizations. There's been a lot of shift in the training industry, and so the cost can be pretty high. So our instructors have come from an instructional design background and also a software engineering background. So if they're in software engineering or cyber, they have done these types of trainings, but also have done the work. And so they have this really unique blend. So we have some amazing instructors that designed our curriculum for us. And we actually are looking at our curriculum on an annual basis, and not just our curriculum. We're looking at what employers are needing from the employer. So we kind of back into the curriculum from what employers are saying they need in terms of talent. So I'm going to give you an example. Every conversation I get is like, well, do you have an AI opportunity yet? Yes, we're creating one, but there's only one other AI. It's a prompt engineer. It's the only AI registered apprenticeship in the whole United States right now. We did not register it, but we're looking at something that's more of a software and AI type opportunity. And we're also embedding in each of our conversations something, or not conversations, but the training, something around AI. So we're not only looking at the curriculum and who's delivering it, but also more importantly, what are employers saying that they need from talent? What are they needing? Where are the shortages? What are the skills that aren't being developed? Whether it's for their current employees and reskilling their incumbent or looking at external. But all of our instructors have that background of not only, we have one person, he's an instructional designer, but he's a software engineer. And then there's the instructors who are actually in the classroom working with the apprentices during RTI that have that technical knowledge of whatever that occupation is, and also have been in the instructional world. So it's a really unique blend. Yeah, our instructional designer, I was floored when I saw what the curriculum design looked like and how quickly he did it. But that's because he's also been in these IT roles and gets what the employers need. So I hope that answers your question. Great questions. So the other occupations, let me go back to this, is human resources. And so this human resources opportunity was just launched this past April. And it is a partnership with the SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resources Management. It's the international largest association, has over 300,000 members globally. And their foundation arm has a lot. I'm a member of this organization. And so the foundation is a educational arm. So it really supports the continuing education for HR professionals. And they were looking for an organization to help run and manage this. It's an HR generalist, HR specialist. I can send as a follow-up. I will send to Mitch just a flyer so that you can see what that looks like. Most of the apprentices that we had from them came from where they were working in organizations and they wanted to develop this on their own. So it was reskilling, which is very interesting. It sets people up to take the SHRM credential, and there's 2 components of training that are self-paced. And then our last area and last pillar is this is also another endeavor where we've created a founding partner and advisory board that's helping us in creating a national standard for life sciences. There's pockets in Oregon, San Diego, and across the United States. I don't know if there's anybody who fits into this, but this is a new endeavor where these organizations are coming to us and saying, we need something that's on a national scope, and we would like your help. And we've hired somebody who worked with the Mass Bio in Massachusetts to help set it up. So those are occupations. Any other questions?
There's one in the chat here from Roy. He says, IT and life sciences tend to be concentrated in urban centers. What will it take to shift those kinds of higher paying industries into more rural areas like our own?
So I think IT is everywhere. I think every organization that has their doors open has IT. As I mentioned, it's not just the IT occupations. And I think it's a lot of the groups like the EDC and other businesses and people going to those employers and saying, how do you create opportunities within our space? If I knew the answer to that, I would be probably in a different role because I know that I live in Oregon and I have family that are in deep Eastern Oregon and have asked me the same thing. I think it's also demonstrating to those employers, hey, there's talent here. There's talent that can help create it. Life science is in a tricky space right now, generally, because of, coming out of the pandemic. They scaled up in many cases pretty high level, and then now they had a little contraction last year. So I don't know the answer to that question. If I did, I would be in an entirely different role right now and doing economic development, not creating talent, but they're definitely connected. But that's a great question though.
So both HR and IT, yes, certainly there's a role in businesses regardless of the type, but it also depends on the size. If you have 5 employees, you're not going to have an HR professional and an IT. You need you know, you need to get to 50 or something before you'd have an IT person, rather than a consultant that you hire. So what can those companies that maybe, you know, just need to train up one of their existing employees, can they contract and get the RTI with Apprenti?
So it wouldn't just be training. So we don't do just the training piece. What we would want, we will not, our training is part of a bigger apprenticeship. So if an organization wished to do that, then we could. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Again,
so can you take an existing employee
oh,
and
100%.
put them through
Yes.
the program?
Yes. Yes. And in our HR program, that was if I don't want to speak completely out of turn, but I think it was almost 100% internal employees. We
Okay.
were reskilling incumbent and developing versus bringing that new in when we
And
brought this
so
program in.
the other thing about HR is it's very state specific.
For
Each
sure.
state has its own laws. So do you have training modules that
No.
are
No. And how,
geared
and in,
towards your
no.
particular state?
No, well, again, that's my background. That's what I did for 25 years before I came to Apprenti. And so what I would suggest is that is really where the on-the-job training can come into play. So would there be training that could be done by different, a SHRM chapter? Could there be training that's done? A lot of these law firms are doing really great free, some in remote, so virtual, I should say, training around what's going on in the state. So we don't get that granular. So again, it's about that occupation that's general and what that, so an HR generalist is what this role is. So it's learning about the different components of HR. And then if someone were going to be like in leave laws or doing wage and comp or something along those lines, then that's where the on-the-job training is now creating that specificity to that organization and in that state. So we would not be we're not going to pretend that we're that we're doing employment law and that we're experts in the states. I mean, even the Society for Human Resources Management recognizes that, and they have a certification that's only for the state of California because all the laws are just so unique in the state of California. So no,
Right.
that's where the on-the-job training comes in. And so if an employer were to come to us and say, well, we want someone to do wage and, wait, if they were manufacturing, well, we need someone to do, comp and benefits and leave. Okay, great. Or health and safety. Then that's where we would work with the employer to say, okay, let's identify where there are local training or training that you have access to in the community that's specific to that state and for that occupation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, great question. I mean, if we had a quorum of employers where we wanted to create a new occupation, we certainly could do that. And we have. That's how we've developed. We started, again, that's how we got to the HS space in HR as well. Great questions. Let's see. So I wanted to end with really about impact, and then we can open the floor for more questions if there are. If not, then we can let Colleen get on her plane and go see her son. So the impact in terms of how and who we help. Again, this looks different in every organization. I'm not going to read each of these. You can read the screen yourselves. But everyone who comes into Apprenti does not have to have a degree. That's not the expectation, although 40% of our apprentices do. And they just may have a degree in something other than the occupation that they're interested in. And so in many cases, these individuals have left something to join a new organization and join in these occupations. And individuals that we work with, again, our focus has always been in those space of untapped talent, and anyone can apply. Anybody can apply. So I want to make that very clear. And so in that space, we, again, look at the fact that we have 89% of our apprentices have been retained by organizations. The average age, again, is 32. And I share that because these are not people who are new to working. They're just new to the occupation that they're stepping into. So they have work experience. We've had one cohort that had our youngest apprentice that was 18 and our oldest apprentice at 64. So that demonstrates just the diversity of individuals that can come into these programs. And when we look at also the impact on those communities, it's really about the impact to the income for the individuals. I'm working with an organization right now. I don't know if everybody knows where Umatilla is. It's not exactly the central hub of Oregon. Very, very, very rural Oregon, and we're creating a program for them for a data center. This will be big. This will be a really interesting opportunity for that community. But it's things like we're looking at is there housing that's available? So again, when you're asking how do you bring these things to how do we bring these things into view and how do we create these opportunities locally? These are the conversations. We're not going to build housing. I'm not advocating for housing in that market. I mean, I am, but that's not what we're doing. It's the organization and then the community that we're working with. So with that, as you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer any questions. I will send this out I'm going to send this to Mitch along with other information so that this can be sent out. And again, Colleen, thank you for having me. And, of course, we have a few minutes so we can, have some Q&A.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you. Does anyone do you have a map of the businesses that you're working with that?
Nope. No, we don't publish that. 350,
Okay.
it changes a lot.
Yeah.
Changes a lot.
Are you in all 50 states or mostly West Coast?
All 50 states.
Okay.
Yep. Placed candidates in all 50 states and have apprentice in businesses in all 50 states.
Okay.
So yeah, it grew really quickly. I mean, in 10 years, it's pretty amazing to see what Apprenti has done. I'm very proud to work here.
And so if a apprentice applies to the program and they're selected, they would need to move to where that company is located.
Ideally, no. Ideally, no. Ideally, we would be looking in the community that the employer is in. We may have people who will say we're open to having people relocate. But the intention of what we're doing is creating those opportunities within the communities. And if not, so if I have an opportunity in Seattle that's going to be starting. Yeah, I mean, if there was we're not going to go outside of like 40 miles because the employer won't pay for relocation. So I think conversely is that if we had someone in your area, we would want to create that opportunity within where the employer is. We don't want to be exporting or importing talent. Ideally, and there are situations, I have one employer, it's a big cohort, it's almost 60 people in 4 different locations across the United States. That's a real extreme. Most of the opportunities I have are 2 to 6, 7, 1 apprentice. So we wouldn't want to, if an apprentice wanted to relocate and they signed up, then yes, we would consider them for something. And they can indicate that when they fill out their application. But from an employer standpoint, they want to create the opportunities within the communities that they're in.
Got it.
So there's kind of maybe 2 ways to answer that, I guess. Yeah, hope that helps.
Does anyone have any further questions?
Sure, it's Steve. I can go ahead and throw another question in here.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, and again, this isn't specific to IT, life sciences, or HR, but maybe it's just really picking your brain, Natalie, as an expert, and certainly having Colleen and Caleb on the phone with the port. Marine trades are a big problem in our community here. I met with Platypus and Westport, and I was just shocked. The Westport guy telling me that he interviewed dozens of people, many didn't pass drug tests, and then he offered the job to 6 different people, 2 people accepted, 1 showed up and then quit the day after. All that time wasted. maybe there's some kind of insights you can help us to try to better understand, to get that filter, to do recruitment better. Is there any insights you might have? I know it's not directly related to your IT, life sciences, HR, but maybe thinking a little bit more from a trades perspective.
Yeah, so my background isn't in working in trades. I want to be very clear. I know that that's a big piece of it, and I know Colleen and I talked about that. I would say that there's two components of that. Of if there is an opportunity to offer the training, something for a career opportunity, you can easily create, and there are occupations in the space that you're talking about. It gives the employee something else than a job. And I think when I have an employee, well, it's a small manufacturing company, and they wanted us to help them. This is very weird, but I might illustrate the point. So they hire 2 to 5 people in this kind of light manufacturing. And again, it's not my space, so I don't even claim to understand all the jobs or all the aspects of it. And so our compliance team is actually taking their onboarding and training and turning it into an apprenticeship, so that when they hire people, they're giving them an apprenticeship as they're getting on the job training, and they're getting the job with the organization. I think that happens everywhere. I mean, I know in Oregon, we have that too. I think, again, like you were saying, passing drug tests, I would be curious going into other markets, like if you go to other states where maybe things aren't legal, what that looks like. But it happens everywhere. And I think this employer, what they said was, we want to be able to kind of put a cherry on the sundae of the opportunity with us, which is to create something that they wouldn't be able to get in another kind of industry or even one of their competitors. I think it's just, that's not I'm not going to pretend to be a talent acquisition specialist. I did that 20 years ago, but I'm not going to pretend to be a talent acquisition specialist. But I do think that there are ways that employers can look at that. And it might be also, do you need to expand your search areas? Are ways that the employer needs to kind of incentivize employees to want to join the organization?
Thank you.
That doesn't answer your question probably the way that you wanted, but I hope that at least gives you some, yeah.
All right. Anyone else? James put an interesting idea in the chat. So John says, do you ever think of it as a better way than just hiring in probation, but to be able to hire someone unqualified but could make it with help?
Oh, 100%. That's apprenticeship. That's what apprenticeship is. Yes, that is exactly what apprenticeship is. That's why you do not have to have any experience to get into any apprenticeship. The design is an on-ramp into a career through something other than what is traditional. And so that's exactly what it is. And the probation, I think there are probation periods in an apprenticeship, but they're an employee. And so, we tell employers, you're going to treat them, you're going to do hire, fire, you're going to do performance management just as you would with any other employee. The only difference is just consider that this person isn't fully trained yet. And so, in IT occupations, for example, we bring people who are veterans, and this is a great example where we have to, I call it the transition to kind of corporate or non-military. And so part of what we try to do is help them understand what are some of the things that are going to be different and unique, and also help the employer understand how they can support those apprentices getting into their organization and making that kind of, shift to corporate, if you will. And I say corporate very loosely, but you get my point, I think. So
if someone takes an apprenticeship program, is there a possibility to get college credits for the training that they received?
We have a couple. So we have gotten some college credit for a couple of our occupations. The challenge is that when we want to create what's called that articulation agreement that says, here's the college credit, and we're actually in the process of doing this with Bellevue College right now. The on-the-job training piece is really hard for higher ed to to qualify into college education. We have a partnership with Northeastern University for a software engineering apprenticeship that could also get credit. And when they looked at our curriculum, when they looked at what's learned in on-the-job training, they said, this is like master's level training that you're giving them. This isn't a bachelor's degree. You're giving them really high level, which was a great thing for us to hear, but it was challenging. And then also because each organization, while we're managing to competencies within the standard, each organization also may add some training that's additional to it. So it can be, we have one company that did a week of like Python scripting, for example. Well, that wasn't in the standard, and that would be additional. So now it's not standardized the way that higher education would like it. But we would love to find a way to do that. So that if someone wanted to go and get a degree in computer science or in business, if they're in HR, for example, that they could have credit for that and help them toward that down the road.
Okay,
So
great. Any other questions?
that's more opinion than anything, I think. It'd be awesome. I mean, we see so many people who are like, well, I would love to ascend within these organizations. How do I do that? It's like, okay, well, if you don't, how do you get it? Well, get in the door. Apprenticeship can help you get there. If they have a tuition reimbursement program, leverage that, figure out a way to make that work. So there's a lot of people who, when they come to us, are like, they've got their eye on a prize somewhere, and it's just a little different than maybe where they started out. So,
Great. Any other questions for Natalie? Let's see. I see something here. That kind of supports a way to broaden the pool as to what Dr. Michael Maxwell was suggesting, and find someone better motivated to stay and succeed. All right. Yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Natalie, so much for coming and talking. We'll keep Apprenti in mind when we talk to our larger businesses that may have a need in those different spaces. I know AM Systems is a life science company in Carlsberg. Maybe I'll shoot them an email and share with them your program. And yeah, our team will certainly talk to others when they're talking about needs within IT or HR. We'll definitely talk about Apprenti as an option.
and I saw your comment. So if you wanted to start up this nonprofit, then we have a team that could help you set up the side, because we had actually, Colleen and I had, and with one of my colleagues, had actually talked about something like that. If you really wanted to do something like that, then we could help you set up your own apprenticeship program for the trades.
Yes, I was
I'm
reading
being
Colleen's
serious.
mind, and I figured this was the conversation she was having with you before she brought you on here.
This is something that we could certainly do. And we have a couple of folks who had worked with AJAC, which did construction, advanced manufacturing apprenticeship. And so just saying, it doesn't have to be HR and IT. If you're interested, let me know. I probably know somebody who can help. So again, think of me as the evangelist for apprenticeship, even though we have our own specialty. So sorry, Colleen. I just wanted to make sure that point was clear, that I am here to be of support in a holistic apprenticeship evangelist sense.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Natalie. Thanks, everyone, and have a terrific day and week.